Just a few seconds.
Okay, sure.
Because that has to vote first, doesn't it? Okay, yep, they're live.
You guys are live.
All right, thank you. All right, good evening. My name is Zachary Karen. I'm the chairman for the Dighton Zoning Board of Appeals. This is the special meeting for Strawberry Fields, Wednesday, March 6th, 2020. The time is 7:04. Obviously, it's not held at Town Hall. We are being held remotely. So first, I just need to read the disclaimer that the town has put on the agenda. And that is, due to the increasing concern surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic, this public hearing will be held remotely with no physical meeting location. Those seeking to provide public input should do so using the methods listed below. Video and audio of the meeting will be aired on Comcast Local TV 9 at a later date. A live recording of the meeting will be available on the Town of Dighton YouTube channel, which can be accessed using the link, and the link is posted to click on right on the agenda. And the public input phone line during the meeting will be 508-669-6431, extension 114, and you can leave a voicemail if necessary. We have Carrie Easterday at the town hall who will be the one receiving these phone calls. And the public input email before or during the meeting, if you wish to do so that way, will be jgray, that's the letter J, and then GRAY at Dighton-ma.gov. And please use the subject line Strawberry Fields Public Input and include your name and address for the record as well. So in lieu of doing a Pledge of Allegiance, we would just like to take a brief moment of silence and recognition for those who have lost their lives due to the virus or anyone going through some hard times. So if we could take a moment, please. Okay, thank you guys. So tonight is the Town of Dighton's first ever virtual public hearing. So there may be some technical glitches along the way, so just please bear with us. I understand this is a moment of craziness for everybody. So just, obviously there's any emergencies, you can contact, like I said, we have Carrie Easterday at the Town Hall, and you may email John Gray as well. So tonight we have staff, consultants, and members of the ZBA and the Strawberry Fields applicant on the call today, and a few members of the public joining us as well. In addition, as I mentioned, Carrie Easterday is the planning board office manager and should be the one helping. So thank you very much, Carrie. I understand it's probably a bit of craziness for you too. If you need anything, just let us know. Tonight, we also have a new member of the Zoning Board of Appeals to introduce, Ryan Eckerson. Ryan, welcome to the team. Ryan will be participating as a member of the public today because you have not been sworn in. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I haven't been sworn in yet.
Okay. All right. Excellent. And then in addition, individuals on the call as well will be Jonathan Gale, who's a member of the board, but just everyone please know that he is on the call tonight as a member of the public. So he will, as well as Selectman Nancy Goulart and Attorney Dennis Murphy, who are on the call. They are on the call as we are, but they will have to wait until the public input portion if there's anything that they do wish to present. So we just ask that they please stay muted on their accounts until the public input portion as well. In which I do want to mention that we will be adjourning the meeting at 9 tonight. However, at 8:15, we will conclude any discussions of subject matter, and we will start talking about ways that we're going to schedule future meetings. And then from 8:30 to 9 during that half hour, that's when we will do the public input portion. And for any of the documents that the public wishes to view at home, they're on the ZBA's website under the Town of Dighton. On the sidebar of the page, there's a link that says additional links. Click that, it drops down, you'll see Strawberry Fields public documents, and that will bring you to a Google Drive that has all of the public documents that we will all be viewing tonight. So you can view that at home for yourself as well. So just remember, if you are not talking, please be muted. If you are joining by phone only, *6 is how you can mute. One of the things that I would like to say is that any votes that are made tonight due to the method of the meeting will have to be done via roll call. So when we are taking votes, I will call out to the members and you have to say yay or nay, as opposed to when we just, if there are no nays, everyone just stay silent. Right now, you need to vocally state your name and then how you are voting either way. Is there any other questions that I can take right now, whether it's from any members of the board or the applicant about any technical procedures for tonight? Okay, so that being said, we were going to go right into the public hearing portion for the case under the applicant. I'm just going to ask if you guys have some revised plans. If you could just address what you've made, what changes you've made to those plans.
Sure. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think preliminarily, again, Christopher Agostino, counsel for the applicant, here tonight, logged in with the applicant's principals, Bisher Hashem and Owen Kelly, and the lead designer, Greg Driscoll of Driscoll Jacobs Engineering. Just quickly, procedurally, I know Jonathan has everyone except for me muted right now. To the extent there is not a lot of crosstalk, maybe when the applicant is presenting, you can just keep an eye out for Bisher or Owen or Greg if they want to make a comment, or perhaps even unmute their microphones while the applicant's presenting. But aside from that one little sort of administrative question, I wanted to thank the board and the board's team, as far as John Gray in the office, and the board's counsel, Marguerite Mitchell, for trying to push forward this remote hearing this evening so that we can try to keep moving forward as far as this project's concerned and maintain some sense of normalcy despite everything that's going on. So thank the board for that. We last actually had a hearing in person back in March 10th, and the chair just referenced that since then, the plans have continued to be refined and continue to evolve with what can best be described as additional detail, not necessarily anything in the way of wholesale changes to the plan. The last submission, which again is available on the board's website, was submitted as of April 17th is the date on that plan set. And that corrected a few Scrivener's errors in the plans as far as the identification of affordable units, the bedroom counts in a few instances, a couple minor tweaks relative to stormwater management facilities. But the plan that's presently before the board, dated as of April 17th, is the same plan set that we had in all material respects, the same plan set that we had up in front of the board when we last met on March 10th. When we met on March 10th, the last substantive discussion we had was what came out of a work session that the applicant had with Mr. Logan, one of the board members, to discuss a few additional refinements to the plan and some open questions. And I recall at that meeting on March 10th, which again, for anyone that wants to catch up, is available on YouTube for anyone to review, what was discussed as far as any additional plan refinements. And, you know, a consensus was reached on a few aspects of the development as far as whether or not we were going to make provision for on-site recreational facilities and a few other general considerations that were discussed, traffic safety and things like that, that don't necessarily result in wholesale changes to the plan, but just make this plan that is now dated as of April 17th more final in its presentation to the board as far as what our final and best effort is going to be. So towards the end of the last hearing, we discussed what at present is probably the most relevant document. I know, Mr. Chairman, you had asked preliminary whether any changes were made to the plan. And I think the answer to that question, as I've described, is no, there are no material changes, more refinements. But I think the operative document at this point is the proposed conditions of approval that we have submitted to the board as well as the list of requested waivers from local bylaws that will allow this plan to be built. And again, if you think back to the first hearing, that really is what Chapter 40B is all about. It's about this board granting waivers from local permit requirements, again, local requirements only, not state requirements, in order to allow this plan to go forward under Chapter 40B. So with that, and with an eye towards the next steps, I think a detailed review of the requested waivers that the applicant has presented to the board will allow the board to continue to drill down on what it is the applicant is proposing and additional details that either then would be addressed in a plan revision, although, at this point, it would probably just be notes on a plan or minor tweaks, or more likely that would be addressed in a condition of approval. So rather than, for instance, if a condition addressed a specific concern for this project, what might happen is the board would say, all right, we'll waive that particular local bylaw. However, we're going to impose a condition that requires the following. And that is the discussion that we would expect to have regarding this April 17 plan set going forward. So happy to turn it back over to the board and hear whether or not we want to discuss any details on the plan a little bit further. Again, this is the same plan. And actually, Jonathan, if you could just unmute Greg when you get a chance. Greg, to the extent there were anything you would identify that was a material change to the layout on the plan, just so we make sure we catch everything. But at this point, as far as the plan that you see in front of you uploaded to the board's website that's available for the public to look at, that's the plan that we're going forward with. And at this point, we're just making sure that everything on there is correct and that there are nothing missed as far as major details or major deficiencies that we can identify. So Greg, anything you wanted to point out?
Yeah, there's a few things, nothing major.
No, sorry. Greg, just quickly, I was going to get Greg Driscoll to just comment quickly on the,
Sorry.
just to confirm whether or not there were any additional changes. One of the things you missed is I was looking at Greg, but you couldn't tell I was looking at him and not you on the camera.
Once you said Greg, I was like, wait a second, I got to stop him there too.
We're all learning.
Yeah, Chris, you're correct. They were pretty much just very minor changes to the plan set, a few things that that Peter picked up on, like an erroneous invert on a pipe here, and another elevation, I think, on an outlet structure and another basin. That's really how they changed on the plans. So.
Right.
And the affordable units, I think we added a couple single-family affordable lots.
Yeah, to make sure the numbers were correct. Yep.
Yep.
And those are called out on the plan set. So, with that confirmation that, we're still looking at the same plan that we had discussed back on March 10th, we're going through that plan to really refine it. I mean, Greg and Peter are talking about things like invert elevations, pipe sizing. I mean, those are final plan type details that we've got to at this stage in what is supposed to be a preliminary planning process. And I think, one of the other exchanges that we had on March 10th was about compliance with stormwater management issues. And we did go back and double check those issues, specifically compliance with the requirements of the stormwater management regulations, compliance with the requirements of the Wetlands Protection Act relative to any wetland resources on site. We did have additional communications with people at the DEP to confirm some of those issues. And at this point, we really do have a very highly refined plan that includes a lot of detail, and we're very comfortable putting this forward as our best bet for the board's review.
Okay, excellent. So that being said, I guess I will go over to the next, the other Greg, so to speak. Greg, if you want to make any comments regarding that meeting?
Yeah, well, the last thing I wanted to go over when we were talking with Chris, this is a question for Chris. Did you get the letter back from the public housing in regards to the 94 to 116 houses?
Is that a letter that's uploaded to the website?
Maybe I should be asking Jonathan Ray that. Not sure if it is. I haven't been into the town hall to see anything in a while.
I don't believe that that letter has been uploaded. No, I could upload
Alright.
it, but I'm not sure I have that letter right now. At
Did-
present.
So we did receive it.
I did not receive it. I don't think the applicant's team has received that. If you could summarize it, we're happy to.
Well, in the last meeting, you had stated that you had to go in front of the public housing in regards to go from 94 units to 116 units.
Oh, sorry. I understand what you're asking. Mass housing.
Yeah.
Yes, so
Yes.
correct. Yes, so Mass Housing is our subsidizing agency. We did send them a notice that we were increasing the number of units, and yes, we did get a letter back that was submitted to the board saying that your existing project eligibility letter is still valid. So Greg, that's one of those technical requirements with the state
Nope.
that yes, yep. We
I'm
can
just
cross that
going
off
back
the
at the last, I'm just going back at some of the questions that were at the last meeting.
Great.
Yep. One of the things, this is for Greg Driscoll. How much of the buffer zone are we gonna allow the butters? It doesn't really clarify on the drawings I saw.
Sorry, how much of the buffer zone to,
Yeah, particularly on going over towards Carriage Parkway. There was a lot of concern in regards to a buffer zone from non-clear lot area. I didn't know how much we were planning on leaving between the house lot going into that next development next door to you. So uncut section.
in the cottage section?
I'm sorry, what was that? You broke up?
In the cottage section of the,
No,
Of the development?
over by Country Hill Way.
okay,
Back of the properties. I remember we discussed in the last meeting, we were gonna do like a no-touch area of undisturbed.
Right.
The plan
I just
shows
wanna make
a
sure-
10-foot wide, no-touch buffer along the abutters at Country Hill.
Okay. Yeah, right, that's one question, all right, and then, I think some of the questions got answered when Chris was talking, this was for Peter Williams. Do you see any serious drain issues from the updated plans?
I don't have, the drainage issues, I don't have a, issue with. I guess some of the questions raised, regarding the stormwater standard policy. I just like, they mentioned that they had spoken to DEP officials to get confirmation on some of these issues. I was wondering if they had confirmatory, at least emails or records of conversations with these officials to see where what the DEP was coming down on that. Because I had raised the issue regarding the buffer requirements to vernal pools. And I know that there's been some judiciary hearing statements on that, but I don't know what the current policy is. I put a call into the wetlands rider and try to get some feedback on that to make sure that everything is current.
And
Yeah, Greg,
is
do you
all
wanna
the
answer?
basins- I'm sorry,
Sorry, go ahead, Greg Logan.
and is all the basins on the drawing staying the same, or are they subject to change that you know of right now, Peter or Greg?
I don't know.
I would
if
like
it's
them to stay the
something
same.
that
It
changes.
kind of depends on what happens in the NOI process. They are the overseers of Wetlands Protection Act and the stormwater management regulations. So there'll be some refinements and whatnot as we go through that. And to answer Peter's question, yes, we've reached out to somebody at DEP. Brad Holmes, the botanist of the project, has reached out and he spoke to one person at the DEP Southeast Regional and is referred to somebody in Boston. So we're waiting to hear back from that person.
So will you provide us records, confirming
Yep.
those conversations? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Greg Logan, is there anything else? Greg, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Yeah, I've got a few more things. The school bus shelter, have we got any design for what we're gonna build, or is it just gonna be a concrete pad?
I believe we discussed that at the last hearing. Bisher, do you want to close the loop on that? I believe we had stated we were going to reserve an area for that, but not design it at this point. Jonathan, can you unmute Bisher?
So everyone on the call can actually unmute themselves. It's a user-enabled functionality.
All right. Can anybody hear
There
me?
he is.
Yes, we're planning just a pad for now, but we're open for suggestions.
The other thing with the bus stop was a question of whether or not the bus company will come in. So we do have the two locations shown, one with the turnaround and one shown at the intersection of Somerset Ave.
All right, until we get that determined, we really can't tell if we're gonna do a pad or if we're gonna do the shelter at that point. So we'll get that cleared up. So that's something I'll bring up later. Also, in our last meeting, Michelle Lima mentioned something about a walk path through the wood area for kids. Does anybody have any of that delineated throughout this drawing anywhere?
No, we didn't add that as a refinement to the drawing. I think, the way to handle that is to have a note in the permit to explore that with the Conservation Commission. Because as we did state at the last hearing, all that land in the back is going to be preserved in perpetuity. So as part of the NOI and the NOI process in this permit. So we'll engage the
Right.
Concom on that.
Greg Logan, are you referring to the path that's sort of like a sidewalk that goes through the condo development? Or are you referring to sort of nature trails?
Nature trail.
Okay.
All right, and going back to stormwater. Have you met with the Stormwater Committee in Dayton in regards to their questions? They had a chance, as the Stormwater had a chance from the town of Dayton to review the updated plans.
So I can't speak for whether anyone on the Stormwater Committee has had a chance to review the plans. We had scheduled to meet with them in person just to discuss our plans for stormwater management on the site in conformance with the stormwater management regulations, but that was interrupted by the pandemic. If it becomes possible to meet via Zoom, perhaps, we're happy to just discuss with them our plans. But I think ultimately, we discussed at length at the last hearing that compliance with the stormwater management regulations at this property should solve any concerns in that regard.
Okay, I just wanted to see if we did try to reach out to them. So I'm sure she's on here for later. She'll come in for the public input. Maybe you guys can set that up, but I know that's a concern with the stormwater. Jonathan, has all the boards had a chance to review these plans? Have we sent all the plans over to them for review? And if they have, has anybody sent any input back on their concerns?
Yeah, so we have sent it all out to all the different boards. And I mean, everything that we have received is currently in the Google Drive for anyone to view. So I have not submitted the most recent plans for all the boards to comment, mostly because the changes to the most recent plans were so small that it would honestly be probably a waste of their time to sort of review. So, if there is more substantive changes to the plans, I'm happy to send it out again for comment. But at this time, I didn't necessarily see a need.
All right, so right now, we have actually sent this since 14th. They don't have the ones that were sent prior, but there's, like you're stating, minute changes for most of the boards to be looking at. But yet it is on their website for them to look at.
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, another one, this was about I just want to make sure when we do the waiver list, that there was a couple concerns on 900 Somerset Ave about putting up a vinyl fence with, I think it was 8 feet tall with lattice on top. I just want to make sure that gets in there. Also, for the dumpster, I need to get with Greg Driscoll and go again, this over. I think been crazy. What it's going to be made out of, what's it going to look like. That's something we discussed. We were going to get into a meeting at another date. I just want to make sure we follow up with that. So no board has sent anything to us in regards to any of this. Okay, that's pretty much the rest of this. I can ask later another time.
Okay. So we will. Next on the agenda, I did have planned to go start going through the waiver list. However, I just want to remind any individuals at home that they can submit any public comments, phone or via email in case anyone joined late to the meeting. The number for the public input will be 508-669-6431, extension 114. And you will be speaking to Carrie Easterday. She's the planning board office manager, and she'll be the one fielding the public input comments. And as a reminder, we will be doing that portion of the meeting from 8:30 to 9. We'll be adjourning at 9. Or you can email any public input comments to Jonathan Gray, the zoning board office manager, and his email address is J, the letter J, and GRAY@Dighton-MA.gov. Is there anything else pressing that anyone wishes to get into before we go on to the waiver list?
I have a couple. I missed something here. I would like to bring up if I may.
Sure, go ahead. Yep.
Did we get anything back from the sewer department on amount of volume that it can pump out?
I believe, yeah, Jonathan, we do have a letter here from Diane Curtis. Is that correct?
The most recent letter that we've received from the sewer commission was in our agenda packet for our March 10th meeting. So
Yeah.
I believe that is a March 10th letter.
Yes, I do see that right now. I just didn't know if there's anything else that came through just to make to answer
Nope.
for Greg. So
Nothing.
no, there's okay. All right. Is there
All right.
anything else, Greg? Or
And
yeah,
what about the water department? Has the water department submitted their study and that we were requesting them to have to us?
I have not received anything from the water district either.
the only thing that I
Did we
have from the
follow
water
up with them?
district. The only thing that I have is a document dated March 4th. This is also in the Google Drive, and it's their comments on the waiver requests from the Dighton Water District rules and regulations. As far as I can see on the drive, that's the only information or correspondence from the Dighton Water District that I can see. Jonathan, is that true?
There is also January 23rd. That was when they sent their letter to us indicating that they might have some concerns related to their capacity. And we have not received anything from them on their study yet. And I'm happy to follow up with them on that.
Okay.
Thank you. So we got the water, we got the sewer, and what I would like to have done is I would like a set of these drawings sent over to the building inspector as well. And some things he might want to see on this matter. Even though there's not much change, I just like at least so he knows he has a new set.
Sure.
Jonathan,
the next-
go ahead, Greg. Go ahead.
Sorry. The other thing that I wanted to talk to, and again, this is stuff we can hash out at any time, but it's the sign out by the street. I wanted to know where that was going to be located and how far out of the this traffic study, we're gonna be out of the vision of all that. I just want to make sure that that's not gonna be too close to the street. It's not indicated on here where it's going.
If the developer wants to comment on that, you can go ahead. If you have anything to add.
Yeah, so we actually did attach as sheet 25 of 25, Greg.
I see the picture of it, yep.
The plan showing the site triangles.
Yes.
And, you know, we can craft a condition to make sure that it's clear that those site triangles are there to depict the area that needs to stay clear. Greg Driscoll, do you call out, I know we show what the sign looks like on sheet, or the proposed sign looks like on sheet 22 of 25, but do you
Yeah.
call out a location on any of these other sheets?
No, we don't.
Okay,
Looking at it
so,
right now. No.
yeah, so I think, you know,
So
Greg, because we have the site triangles called out, I think if we just define where it can't go with, or where anything can't go with respect to the site triangles, that should solve that concern.
So I do see on sheet 23 of 25, if you're on a tablet or a computer screen, if you zoom in on the drive where the proposed bus stop is, it does say proposed stacked stone planter with sign and stone pillars.
Yeah, good eye attack. That's exactly, yep. That's it.
Okay. Greg, Greg Logan, do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I just wanted to confirm when we do the sign. I know we did change something in our bylaws of sign size. I just wanted the building inspector to see that. That's the reason why I wanted to go up, because the signage is larger than normal that we have allowed. But I believe we did change our sign sizes recently. Just wanted to confirm before they go and make all that out. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to go to the building department.
Okay. Is there anything else, Greg?
Yeah, I know it was up a topic. I just want to clarify some things. When we do the, is Bishop getting a bond, or are we holding land on this one? I can't remember what the story was with that.
So we proposed the condition that I believe Bisher had used on other projects in town, where he posts the land as effectively the surety.
Okay, so it's land, not a bond. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Sure. I got another question.
Yep.
On page, well, I guess we do this page, the same thing. On page 14 of the drawings,
Yep.
over in the cottages where the road ends, is that, those last 5 houses, is that privately plowed, or is that going to be the town's responsibility?
That's privately plowed. The whole. It's one lot, it's condominium. It'll be owned by the association.
So these 5 individual cottages would be plowed by private.
Not only these 5, all the road in the cottage section is private.
The whole cottages, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm good for now.
Okay. Is there any member of the board that has any comments before we go into the waiver list? Okay. So we are going to jump right in to the waivers. I'm just going to have Jonathan Gray. Do you mind reading those for us? Do you want to start with number 1?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, hold on. Let me just, let me put it up.
Sorry, Greg. Go ahead.
I'd like to hear from Marguerite if she has anything at this point in time before we go into waivers.
Okay, sure.
Good evening, everyone. So I appreciate and applaud you for doing all of this virtually as you're doing and moving us forward on this public hearing. I have been having some conversations with the developer and with Peter Williams in the interim since our last public hearing. So we have been having conversations about kind of the plan and the recognition that tonight we will start focusing on these individual waiver requests. and also what might still be outstanding. As you also may recall, at the last public hearing, we were talking about questions relating to having the comments of the Board of Health, and particularly the Board of Health agent, addressed going forward. As you all know, none of us envisioned this pandemic happening the way that it has. It has resulted in the Board of Health agent being extremely tied up, focused on obviously the health and safety of the residents in Dayton. And so for that reason, at this moment in time, we're going to table that and come back to it later in our process. But it is something that both Peter Williams and I will make sure is addressed before we close this public hearing out. Additionally, for tonight's provisions, I guess my suggestion will be that maybe we could share the screen, Jonathan, so that people
Yep.
who are viewing this live would be able to read the waiver request as well. Peter Williams and I have reviewed all these requests, and we are prepared to provide you with our comments on each of these requests. And then, you know, some of these requests, I'll say in general, are in essence the necessary so that because it is a 40B process and because the zoning board is the entity that makes most of the decisions in this case, with especially with it is the entity that makes all decisions with regards to local bylaws. There are situations where we need to substitute the board, the zoning board of appeals, for the board that is involved in the waiver request. And so in some cases, that's essentially all that we're doing here. In a few cases, the waiver request also may be needed because it just doesn't apply when you're dealing with a 40B. For instance, site plan review isn't and something that you're going to need to go through with a 40B application, because the developer instead is going through this process with the zoning board of appeals. So there's certain waivers that are going to be appropriate in light of the fact that this is a 40B application and the process that you're following under that. And then there'll be some waiver requests that I'm sure through our conversations with the board and with the developer, we may be looking for more information to understand the waiver request more. And in that case, I'm not expecting the developer to have all of that information at their fingertips tonight. We may need to just simply circle it and move forward and come back to it towards the end of our conversation about waiver requests. And then finally, there may be some waivers too that we look at and we say, either we're going to draft revised local bylaw language, or for instance, the zoning board of appeal dimensional requirements. I know that they're looking to waive those dimensional requirements, but I'm sure as a board, you're going to want some sort of a minimum threshold that's going to be followed. My suggestion would be that you modify the actual bylaw provision rather than just simply waiving it. And we could work through that modification through this conversation. And in other cases, it might be appropriate to waive it in light of the fact that there may be a condition that we draft in the actual decision itself. So I just want to throw all those different possibilities out there. It is a little bit of a detailed process that we're going to go through, but in some cases, we may be able to kind of quickly address the bylaw, knowing that it falls into one of these categories. And in other situations, it's going to require a little bit more discussion. And hopefully through that, some of the details of this project are going to come to light, and you'll be reminded of conversations that we've had. I like what we've done tonight, where we've referenced pages on the plan where details are already provided, because that'll be helpful for everybody as you move forward through this. And you know, as if you have any questions, both Peter Williams and I are prepared to address them and provide you with any support that you have.
Excellent, thank you. The only question I have before we start, just more of a point of order. Do we read all of these out loud individually for the record, or is referencing them on our screens and online substantial enough? I mean, how do we typically go about doing this? This is the first time I've gone through this.
My suggestion would be that you definitely share your screen so that you can see them. I think that there should be some type of either wording or summary provided for purposes of addressing anybody who might have a disability in the public who's listening or participating in this public hearing. So
Yep, absolutely.
I think it really makes sense to try to at least read the provision that is looking to be waived. so that we can address and make sure that all people have access to this public hearing.
Absolutely. I have no objection to that. I just wanted to, just to make sure. Okay. All
So,
right.
Mr. Chairman, the only, as far as point of order about how to go
Yep.
through this, and I spoke briefly with town council about characterizing groups of these in some instances as somewhat administrative, to the point, for example, all the planning board's conditions that says you shall apply to the planning board. I mean, obviously that is subsumed within the 40B process. So, if I could take the lead in going through these, and then to the extent the board or Marguerite says, well, wait a second, that's not administrative, or we want to delve into any of them in particular, that might be the most efficient way, unless you want to maybe group them together for yourself. For instance, I'm looking at the first 4 of them,
Mhm.
which to me would appear to be Chapter 40B administrative conditions. So I don't think we need to read those line by line.
Right. I do see what you mean. Marguerite, what's your opinion on that?
Chris, I don't disagree with you that a lot of these, there are going to be some that we lump into categories administratively. I guess my only concern is just that, especially when we're doing this remotely, I think we need to make sure that we're providing as much access as we can. And so in light of that, I think we still need to at least read the local regulation that's in play out loud. And then I don't disagree with you that, at least with regards to the first 3 or 4 that we're looking at, you're correct that this really is a matter of substituting the zoning board of appeals for the planning board. And that's how it's being waived. It might be a few more beyond that, but.
Well, I wouldn't even say that. I wouldn't say we're substituting. I'd say these just are not applicable. They should be granted as waivers. And I think, any person desiring to make a subdivision within the subdivision control law, we're not making a subdivision within the subdivision control law. It's within Chapter 40B is the power granting this particular subdivision. So it's a local bylaw that it just doesn't apply under Chapter 40B. It's not, I don't want to run into a situation where we're preserving huge sections of the bylaw by substituting planning board with zoning board, where it's just not applicable and there's a separate process. So yeah, let's go through them line by line. I'm just trying to be as efficient as possible, and it can get tedious. And, a lot of times, a lot of these are worked out. They don't necessarily have to be discussed line by line in a public hearing. So to the extent we can try to, expedite this, and if the board has questions about any of them, they can use some of their own time offline to go through these. And if they have questions, they can highlight it rather than, do it line by line during a public hearing.
Chris, if I may, a couple concerns I have with doing what you're stating is like Marguerite stated, is this is now being done televised and people won't be able to see it. Like not everyone's able to see this live. And one of the things on line item 1 is the road construction. Am I correct on that? I know you already got in your drawings, the width and sizes and stuff and what we're making it on, but I just want to make sure that gets brought out so that we're not hiding anything. We're not see, well, you just waived it without any talking about. That's one thing I'd like to have happen.
Yeah, I don't think that number 1 has to do with road construction specifically. I think it's procedural in nature, but we can go line by line. I think you're gonna see how my concern plays out as we go line by line on these, but let's have at it.
Okay. All right. So, Jonathan, if you want to kick us off with the first one.
Sure, just give me a moment here. Would it be appropriate for me to show on the screen the planning board responses, because they were sort of the most comprehensive in nature?
I'm not sure logistically, Marguerite. How do you
It's
feel
the
about that?
same exact document.
Why
It's just,
don't you pull that up, Jonathan, and let me see. I believe that would be appropriate, because then that'll provide even additional input to the zoning board to be considering. So they'll hear from Peter Williams and I, they'll have the planning board's comments on it, and I agree with you that they were, at least with regards to their regulations, they were pretty comprehensive.
Okay.
And
Let
Chris, if for some reason they seem to have missed one, we can always share a different screen. We can always share a different document,
Okay, I have it. I have mine printed out.
right?
So let's see. Are you seeing the agenda right now or the planning board
The
document?
agenda.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
All right. Are we seeing the planning board document now?
Yes, I
Yes.
think you need to go into that document a little bit.
Yep. So it's here. Let's see. All right. So here, this document has waivers 1 through 87. So I don't expect us to get all the way down there that far tonight, but so as far as I know, there was no edits to waivers 1 through 87. So these are the same. I believe this document from the planning board was received February 12th. So here is the waiver that was requested by the applicant and then the planning board's recommendation right alongside it.
Okay, just one question of the latest waiver list that we put out is dated March 11th. So,
Correct. Yep. And so the only additional waivers that are included in the March 11th, I believe it goes through waiver 95. Correct me if I'm wrong, but waivers 1 through 87 are here. So, and I don't believe they were edited. Would you, Chairman, would you like me to read these off or?
I think that makes sense unless the chairman wants to read it off, having you do it, Jonathan. Just read the regulation in question and the number. These are all coming from the planning board rules and regulations. And then from there, you can also read the recommendation of the planning board. And then Peter Williams and I can probably step in and provide our recommendation. And I have a feeling we're going to have some conversation with the developer on this.
Sure. All right, I'll start off. Waivers requested for Strawberry Fields. This is from the Planning Board Rules and Regulations, waiver request number 1 from section 2211 of the Planning Board Rules and Regulations. Any person desiring to make a subdivision within the meaning of the subdivision control law of any land within the town shall, before proceeding with the improvement or sale of lots in the subdivision, or the construction of ways, or the installation of municipal services therein, submit to the board a plan of such subdivision and secure approval by the board of definitive plan as hereinafter provided. The applicant requests a waiver to the above referenced section, as the Zoning Board of Appeals will review these plans under a comprehensive permit per Mass General Law, Chapter 40B. The planning board's recommendation was that this does not apply due to Chapter 40B.
So I don't see Peter Williams on my screen the way that I have it here. I know he's participating, and I'm sure when he speaks, he'll show up on my feed correctly. But I'll start right now by saying that the recommendation that both Peter and I had with regards to this was that this is the type of situation where the Zoning Board of Appeals should be substituted for the planning board. I'm going to assume that the developer is going to reiterate what Attorney Augustino just said here. I don't agree that this is just a straight administrative waiver, because I see no reason why the developer is not complying. If we were to use Zoning Board of Appeals in that last line there, secure approval by the Zoning Board of Appeals of a definitive plan is hereinafter provided, I believe that all that is being sought to be done is being complied with here. And that would be the appropriate way that this, in my mind, regulation should be modified.
So Marguerite, this tracks the process under the subdivision control law. Definitive plan is a term of art under the subdivision control law. There at no point in this process or ever will be what could be referred to as a definitive plan. I think 40B has its own process, and then the comprehensive permit outlines the process for approval of final plans. This is not applicable. This is just planning board process language that is not applicable, so it should be waived to prevent any confusion. All of these administrative issues should be waived and don't need to be preserved, because if, God forbid, someone wants to meddle with this and say, well, where's your definitive plan? That's not what's being submitted. So I really feel strongly that where the administrative process under 40B is different, that it should be a waiver as opposed to a rewrite of an existing local condition that, unfortunately, you know, we all understand what we're trying to accomplish as we sit here tonight, but, you know, we don't know who might take over 5 years from now, or what this might be looked at by someone else who's not here, or someone that wants to meddle in the 40B process. So, you know, these types of waivers administratively are generally granted without, you know, 15 minutes of discussion. So I think you and I can discuss this conceptually offline as counsel. And, you know, I can show you how this tracks the subdivision control law as opposed to the 40B process. So no, you know, we're not going to secure approval by the board of a definitive plan as hereinafter provided. The approval process is under the permit. This goes away altogether.
Well, I'll respond to you, Chris, by saying that I certainly don't mind suggesting that the board could rework that language as well. So secure approval by the Zoning Board of Appeals in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 40B. But
Oh,
I am
why?
not
Why
going to
torture it?
recommend, Chris, I'm not going to recommend to this board that they simply waive this entire bylaw or any of the procedures that exist, nor do I think this board ever is comfortable doing something like that. They have procedures that exist under their planning board rules and regulations that this board is willing to participate in as per 40B. And I do agree with you that, you know, if the term definitive plan is a term of art in the planning board rules and regulations, I agree that 40B does supersede it in some aspects, but not entirely. And it does not indicate that you have to wholesale throw out the planning board rules and regulations. So we can continue to discuss this offline if you want, but that's going to be my recommendation to the board with regards to this type of language. And again, it'll ultimately be up to the board to decide how they want to proceed with this waiver request.
Yeah, I think I'll provide some commentary, you know, for the board's consideration as to how these types of issues are handled generally. I know Dayton takes a unique approach to some of these issues, and it's not always to their benefit to retain something like this, as it does burden the process generally in many instances. So I'm going to provide some additional commentary on that, but I think, you know, I've said my piece on it.
I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman, do you want to just move on and hear the comments, or do you want to actually have the board deliberate and get some feedback too? And it may be helpful with regard to this first one, because I think that it will come into play with some similar ones afterwards. I don't think we have to have the exact same conversation every single time, but maybe helpful to hear the opinions of the board so that Attorney Augustino can hear that as well, since he plans on providing further information about this.
Zach, it looks like you're muted.
All right, well, I'll talk on this matter. Like I stated earlier, I wasn't comfortable with the language there. One of the things was the construction of ways. That's the reason why I said I'll wait on that one. I'm glad Marty brought it up. I know Chris said there isn't a concern with the roads. Again, we can go back and revisit this. I feel, I'm speaking for me, not for the board, I feel we should continue on, like you stated, and get some of these that we can do. But right now, I feel comfortable tabling 2-1.
So Greg, you're just a little choppy on the feed there. You think you'd rather just table this one and move on, or you want to discuss it? I'm sorry.
I feel like Chris is going to get some more information in regards to that particular bylaw, and we're just going to waste too much time on 2211. If Philly wants to move on with different ones, I'm comfortable with doing that. We're just tabling the first article of waiver.
Okay. Is anyone else on the board feel differently? No? Okay. So if that's, I mean, I have no problem waiting to hear more either. So if we can go on to number 2.
I'll read
yep.
that, Mr. Chairman. So waiver number 2, the applicant, this is section 2212 of the Planning Board Rules and Regulations adopted January 17th, 2007. The applicant is responsible for the acquisition of the necessary rights and presentation of complete and correct information to the board. Failure to do so, including the failure or inability to obtain all necessary permits, licenses, releases, or rights, may be a reason for disapproval, rescission of an approved subdivision, and or modification of subdivision in addition to any other actions provided by law. The applicant requests a waiver to the above referenced section, as the Zoning Board of Appeals will review these plans under a comprehensive permit per Mass General Law, Chapter 40B. And the Planning Board's recommendation was that this does not apply. Since the Zoning Board of Appeals is the approving body under Chapter 40B, the waiver is unnecessary.
So
Okay,
again, the recommendation that myself and Peter Williams had talked about was that this would be another situation where it's appropriate to substitute the Zoning Board of Appeals for the Planning Board, and also to reference that this would be a subdivision that is being approved under the provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 40B, but not a wholesale waiver.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just make 2 points. One, I think maybe it's just having been locked up for 2 months inside, I'm a little bit cantankerous about what could be a torturous process where we just spent 15 minutes going over 2 conditions. I think that in itself kind of tells you that, it's not normally how you'd go about these administrative things. But the second thing I'd point out is that the town of Dayton has 13 pages of 40B process regulations that address some of these very same administrative issues that are covered in the planning board regulations. So this idea of rewriting the planning board's regulation to suit a comprehensive permit, where you have 13 pages of comprehensive permit regulations, begs the conclusion that you just waive all these. Just waive all the administrative. We shouldn't, in what is supposed to be an expedited process, spend this much time on the administrative issues. We should be talking about, there are substantive issues in the planning board regs as far as the design features of the development, but I was hoping that we could have, dispensed with the administrative ones where 40B regulations are already present in Dayton. So just another point, and again, we'll table it from there.
Okay, Marguerite, do you have any feedback on that?
I do. It's your call if you want to belabor this a little bit more. I have a response certainly to that. I agree this process is expedited, Chris, under 40B, but it's expedited in the sense that you don't have to go to multiple boards to get lots of permits and relief. It isn't expedited where we're just supposed to say wholesale the town is going to not follow their procedures of their own local boards to the extent that they can. And I recognize that there's provisions that they've adopted, 40B rules and regulations. Much of that is spent addressing the documents that need to be filed for a public hearing to be opened. And much of that is spent with regards to modification requests and other things after a permit is granted. But they don't get into the same level of detail that the planning board does with regards to subdivision rules and regulations. I feel that this may be splitting hairs somewhat, but I know that the history with this board is not to wholesale waive their other local boards' rules and regulations. They understand that the law requires them to substitute their role for that of other local boards. And they're willing to do that. And they have always said that they are expecting this process to follow the 40B requirements, and the 40B law, but they're not comfortable just wholesale waiving the regulation and not having it apply.
We're not asking for a wholesale waiver.
Yes,
We're
you are.
asking,
You're asking
no,
that
no,
that
no, no,
be
no. We're asking for the administrative requirements to be replaced with the 40B administrative requirements. We're not some developers do come in and say, let's get a wholesale waiver of the planning board regs, but we're not doing that. I'm saying that I'm
That's
looking
not
at
what I said. I said the wholesale waiver of these types of requirements. You're asking that this entire section 2211 and 2212 be waived in its entirety and not substituted with anything else. And I'm saying to you that I historically have not seen this board do something like that. And I
Okay.
don't see any reason why this board, it has not indicated to me that it's of a different mindset now. So the board has instead substituted its role in the 40B process where appropriate within these types of provisions in the planning board rules and regulations, but they have not just simply waived them outright.
Yeah, you know, I think we'll discuss this offline, you know, because I'm looking at conflicting provisions in the zoning board's own 40B regs. So we'll have to reconcile that because it's frustrating.
So I do understand that. Just being said, I'm looking at the time here. It's 8:05. Just quickly, I just want to turn to Carrie Easterday really quick, if she can hear me. Just so we can plan the rest of the meeting, what is the feedback for public input like?
I have nothing at this time.
There's no calls. And Jonathan, I just want to double check. You haven't gotten any emails to your email address regarding public input?
You know what? I'll check right now.
Only because if we're adjourning it, you know, obviously discussing the process of going forward is going to take a little bit. And if we had a bunch of public input, I didn't want to risk it getting too late on the time. That's all. But if there's no public input, I'm fine going forward more with the waivers, unless the attorneys feel like it's best to, it's best for them to talk offline about things before we go into more discussion. So Jonathan, if you want to check that first.
Yeah, I don't see anything right now.
Okay, and Carrie, so you've no calls or emails that came in, correct?
Let's see, no calls. And John, I did receive. I do have an email from Jonathan Gale.
Okay, so we will get to that, and obviously we have people on the call as well who are members of the public who are going to wish to speak. So we may have no public input as in from offline people who are listening from home or watching from home, but we do have people on the call that are going to want to make comments as well. So I do have the time being 8:07. So is there, Attorney Mitchell, is there anything that you feel like is worth, should we continue on for the next 5 minutes or so, or should you guys talk offline and we go into the logistics of scheduling the meeting? Because I'm sure the developer is going to want to comment on anything that will be mentioned by the public, and I want to make sure they have time to respond as well.
It's your call. I mean, I think that I'm going to have the same comment, and I assume that Attorney Augustino is going to have the same response, probably up until number 2520. So
Okay.
If we want to start there, and Attorney Augustino and I can speak to the other ones, and we can come back to them, we can table. What I would suggest the board does for public purposes is they table waiver request numbers 1 through 8.
1 through 8.
Start with waiver request number 9.
Okay, so I mean, we do have a little bit of time before we hit the 8:15 mark. So I am fine going into the first few of these before we close. Not close. I'm sorry. Halt this part of the conversation. So John, if you want to pick up at Marguerite, you said number 9, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so Don, if you want to skip down to the waiver request for at number 9, if you want to read that out loud.
Sure. Section 2520, standards of adequacy. Streets within a subdivision shall be considered to provide adequate access if and only if complying with the standards established in these rules. Ways providing access to streets within a subdivision shall be considered to provide adequate access where, prior to construction on any lots, the applicant ensures that such access will be in compliance with the subdivision regulations for right-of-way width, pavement width, maximum grade, and site distance requirements applicable to ways within a subdivision. The applicant requests a waiver to the above referenced section, as the Zoning Board of Appeals will review these plans under a comprehensive permit per Mass General Law 40B. And the planning board recommendation was deny. There is concern for providing access to the site for emergency situations. The town's rural character ought not be sacrificed to a developer's desire to reduce cost and time.
Okay, Marguerite, if you want to comment on that first.
Okay, so we're suggesting this one be rewritten with regards to certain language within this waiver request. So the third line down where it says these rules, we suggest we rewrite it. So I'm going to start with the if and only if piece. If and only if complying with the standards established in the conditions of this comprehensive permit and the approved plans. And then additionally, putting that same language in compliance with the conditions of this comprehensive permit and the approved plans will also be substituted for the words subdivision regulations, which are another 2 to 3 lines down after the words these rules.
Okay, and Peter Williams, do you have anything regarding this one? I know this is a little more than just strictly administrative, so I just want to see if there's anything you have regarding this one before we turn it over to Chris Augustino.
Peter, I believe you muted.
I'm sorry, I switched screens there, so.
That's okay.
I'm in concurrence with what Marguerite has stated so far in this item.
Okay. All right. So Attorney Augustino.
Yeah, I mean, we have some new board members. Mr. Chairman, you're seeing how this is playing out, and I know the composition of the board has changed a little bit. I'd be curious what the board thinks about going this route as far as reviewing the planning board's conditions reviewing the planning board's regulations. I mean, for instance, you can see here what the intent is. The intent is to set minimum requirements for the construction of roads. In the 40B process, the hearing is intended to vet whether or not this road is safe. And the board and its peer review engineer have gone to great lengths to determine that. And generally, the waiver of the condition, a wholesale waiver of a condition like this, would follow from the board's review. So is there any opinion of the board as to whether or not this is the type of process that it wants to follow going forward? Apparently understanding that this is how it's been done in the past, which I'm not sure it's been done to this level of detail, but is there any thought on that from the board's perspective?
So I will address either Peter Karen or Greg Logan, as you two have been involved in the most 40Bs of anybody on the board, the current board. What is your guys' feedback on this?
Well, the last time that we have done one of these, it took multiple days, multiple meetings to go through all of the waivers.
Right.
I personally am not comfortable with just releasing the language. Sometimes we put conditions like Marguerite was doing on the language. So we'll waive it with the condition of such, and that's what we're trying to go through right now. I think after Chris and Marguerite do speak on a couple of things, you'll get a better plan on understanding how we like to go down through these, because there's some of these things like I'm not speaking for the board, but I'm not comfortable releasing waivers when we still want you to still meet with stormwater. I know you're doing the DEP and I know all that stuff, but I still comfortable having our local bylaw board of the stormwater to be able to meet with those, as well as like the road that got mentioned here on the other one. The language was it's in the language. This is the reason why we're going over them and we can put conditions. That's usually the way I've done them. I've done this particular project for another developer, and trust me, it was long. So I don't think we're just going to go through 85 of these.
Okay, and Peter, Karen, I know you're not a voting member on the board. I mean, I'm sorry for this case. What is your thoughts on this process?
Peter, looks like you're muted.
On your screen, I'm not sure if you're on your phone or your computer, Dad, but there's a, if you click on your face, it says mute or unmute on the bottom left. There you go.
Okay, it's a tedious process, but it's something that's a necessity. In the past, we've gone over individual waiver requests. I don't recall where we've ever grouped them before, but I agree with Greg. We spent hours going over the waiver request, sometimes till midnight, and I just don't want to skim over any of them.
No, I feel the same way. I mean, again, this is my first time doing it, so I think that the last thing I want to do either is skim over at anything either. So that being said, Marguerite, there really is no then action to take on number 9. Would you say correct right now? Since there is like potential rewriting that has to be done.
First, just to be fair, I believe Michelle also is able to speak to this because she's not participating as a member of the public. So why don't we get her input, but then I can tell you the options that are available to you on how you want to proceed with number 9.
Okay, Michelle, go ahead.
So being a new member, and this is new to me, I'm actually taking in consideration that what Marguerite is saying as legal counsel for this town. I'm going to probably go with what I believe her opinions or Peter's are, and actually the seasoned members of this board, because they have gone through this before. I have no problem with rewriting the language in any of these in order to make sure that we're doing the best for both the developer and the town. So I have no problem when we have to table anything and then revisit it. It's fine. I'm kind of going with the opinion of Marguerite in regards to, not tabling everything, but rewording it so that everyone is covered. I think that's probably the best way to go through all of these waivers. I mean, some of them, it's just simple wordage has to be changed around.
Okay. All right. So Marguerite, if you want to respond, just bear in mind the time is 8:17. Marguerite, after you're done with this comment, we really probably should start going into the logistics of going forward with other meetings, because I'm sure we have members of the public who have things that they want to speak and have addressed.
Well, Mr. Chairman, just quickly, if we're gonna go line by line like we are, and I think tonight's worked out well as far as the hearing is concerned. Is there any appetite from the board as to trying to get a little further into these rather than dedicate about 30 minutes to it? If the board has maybe another half an hour, I don't know, just I throw that request out there if we're going to go line by line.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with continuing.
You what?
I said I'm comfortable with continuing.
Yeah, if we want to revisit it after maybe the public input.
I mean, typically, the public input would be the final portion of the evening. Just because, with considering how late it's going to get, I really don't want to, keep going so much later. I know people are all on, devices that may I know I just have to plug my phone in, so I don't want to go on too late into the evening. Marguerite, what's your opinion on this?
It's the call of the board, frankly, but I do hear your comment. I would say that, you know, the next meeting that we have can definitely be more addressed to the substantive piece because we've gotten this process. How are we doing this out of the way? I'm also aware that this zoning board actually has a few other items on their agenda tonight to take care of. So you as a board are going to be still staying on to address a few other pieces after the public hearing on this case is over. I think that it is going to take some time and several meetings. So perhaps maybe a good compromise, Chris, might be to try to schedule the next meeting fairly close in time because we can just keep working and moving through this.
Just so you know, I mean, okay, we were not planning on having our regular meeting in May. So one of the options for rescheduling our the next meeting for this was going to be to May 27th. I mean, I'm not saying I'm opposed to doing it earlier than that. I'm just letting you guys know that the regular meeting we were going to have in March, May, excuse me, we're not going to be doing that. So that was an option for the next Strawberry Fields meeting.
Yeah, and then perhaps Marguerite and I can consult offline because a lot of these, you know, appear to be questions between council as to what's appropriate, how these things work, and then maybe if we can get a meeting of the minds, it might help to expedite it. I think to the board's point, you know, if you've addressed administratively how these waivers work in other permits, you know, maybe I can take a look back at some of the other waivers that were granted as a matter of course, or modifications that were done as a matter of course in other permits and just say, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. If it's the board's prerogative to really preserve the language and edit it line by line rather than relying on the permit and the 40B process, then maybe I can help that along by going back to prior permits and just saying that works, that works, that works. So I'll do some homework as well.
Okay. So Jonathan Gray, obviously you can provide Chris Augustino with any links. I mean, obviously not anything hard copy that he would come pick up right now, but any links to any former permits, I'm sure he has ways of getting them too. But does that sound good?
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, definitely reach out. And if you don't have a document and you're looking for it, let me know. I'll try my best to find it.
Thank you.
So
I'm also able to provide copies if needed of many of these.
Yep, and of course for the public too, we can put virtually anything online to the Dropbox that anyone is accessing tonight too as well. So, you know, if anything, this is going to be easier for the public to view things than in the past when they've come to meetings and felt like they weren't getting information for whatever reason. This is the best way for them to do it too. So, I think that will be helpful as well. So just looking at the time, it's 8:21. So we do need to review, discuss, and act the extension of the continued public hearing in light of the state emergency. So due to the COVID-19 legislation, all public hearings are automatically extended to 45 days after the state of emergency. So Marguerite, legally speaking, when do you feel like this public hearing should be extended to in terms of the extension waiver?
Sorry, so the state of emergency is still in effect and we don't know when that's going to end. So there is a law that already has been passed by our legislature and has been signed by the governor that automatically extends all deadlines absent further agreement with the developer or the consultant to 45 days after conclusion of the state of emergency. So we don't need anything further in writing at this time. I do recommend that you still move to the next date for your public hearing to happen virtually sooner rather than later.
Yes.
You can keep this process going, but just know that ultimately your time is not being pressured for you. Any work you're doing right now is work that is just going to help you not have that time crunch when the state of emergency is over. And perhaps unfortunately, I don't know how the state of emergency is going to play out. Perhaps we may find ourselves getting most of our work done before the state of emergency is over.
Right.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to stop sharing my screen at this point or?
Sure, yes. Yep, I was just gonna say that when she was on speaking. Yep. Okay, excellent. So, as I said, we decided to not hold our regular public hearing at May 27th of this month. In fact, Jonathan, just for the record, do you mind stating that law that you read to me the other day about regular meetings and how we can choose to just stick with special hearings?
Are you talking about the new COVID-19 legislation?
Yes.
Yep. So that was, I can't recall the exact name of the law, but it was section 17 regarding permit granting authorities. What was your specific question on that?
Was so we, and just to be sure, we have the right to say we're not going to hold any regular public meetings if and choose to devote things to just special hearings.
Yeah, I believe, yeah, Marguerite could probably speak to this as well, but I believe if the board decided that they didn't want to hold any public hearings during this period, they could. I'm sure there are towns out there that are not currently holding any public hearings. So it's
Okay,
really up
so
to the board.
right, okay.
The legislation, it gives you the authority, if you want it even with this particular public hearing, to not hold it remotely and to wait until the state of emergency was over and act within that 45-day time frame. You could.
Okay.
The chairman has that authority to do that without needing a quorum of the board to be present. But
That was one thing that we were only discussing ahead of time in case this ended up not working out at all. Because
Right.
obviously we're the first town to do, the first board to have this kind of process. If it ended up not being, feasible at all, then that would have been something to discuss. But obviously I feel, and I'm not speaking for everybody, but I think this has been a smooth enough process that we can absolutely continue with the public hearing. Would you agree?
I'm not seeing anything that's making me concerned that you're not meeting all the requirements of the laws that have been enacted. And
Okay.
I do think it's worthwhile for this board to keep trying to move forward if they're able to at this time.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
good question. You're saying that we could not regard have a meeting on the 27th of May? You're not having a meeting?
The 27th would be our regular meeting day, the way we always do on the fourth Wednesday. We as a board are not going to meet for our regular meeting. That being said, that is a date as an option for us to have the next Strawberry Fields public hearing meeting.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page.
No, if anything, it is a way that I thought it was a good chance for us to, move this meeting this hearing farther along, considering normally we'd have to be pushing it a month because of the way we have a regular meeting. But because we're not, I feel like the 27th is fine. If people are able to even do it sooner, that's fine with me too. So what's the board's feeling on that and the developer in terms of people's attendance for the next coming weeks?
I can do it.
I'm
anytime.
open. Same thing.
I'm not going anywhere. And I don't
Okay.
have any other hearings scheduled
And-
that evening.
At this point, I mean, it's not like we're getting an influx of new documents from you guys where we would, obviously requiring X amount of days ahead of time. That being said, there's really nothing super pressing that we have to we need time to review unless we have an extensive change out of nowhere. So that being said, does the 27th work for everybody? Does anybody have any opposition to that date or anything?
27th is fine.
What do you think, Chris and Bishop? Would you rather try to meet weekly or every 2 weeks? Since this is going to be drawn out with reviewing every single waiver, so.
I mean, I'm hopeful that, I don't see any reason, Marguerite, if you and Peter could share your take on the waivers as legal counsel and the board's design review engineer. That way, I know you had mentioned briefly to me your thought process, but we didn't have a chance to consult beforehand, as to your take on each one of these. So maybe if we as council are able to confer offline, just to get our thoughts as council together, then when we go through it, it'll be easier for the board to, we don't have to go back and forth during the meeting like we did tonight.
I certainly don't mind having further discussions with you offline, Chris, and try to clean up some of the documents that Peter and I put together, which right now are with lots of different comments all over the place. So I can try to do that and maybe share some things in writing with you that we're looking at, or direct you to some prior decisions to take a look at. Wednesday nights in general are a little hard for me to participate in. I don't know if it has to be on a Wednesday night. If it does have to be on a Wednesday night, then I can definitely make the 27th work. The 20th may be a challenge at 7 o'clock, but if we can use a different night of the week, for instance, possibly
19th?
Tuesday, what's
Yeah.
that?
Anyone
Chris,
interested
That
in the
works for me.
19th?
The 19th, let me just double check. The 19th can work for me. I mean, the only restriction we had to what day was because of, obviously a space to meet in, and obviously that's not the case right now. And as long as, for me, because I'm in a position where I do still work, I work at a supermarket, so I don't often work that late. The latest I would work to is 6. So really, I'm pretty much good whenever. I mean, as long as, like I said, if everyone has enough notice ahead of time to arrange the way we're going to communicate, I can do whatever. So
Fisher and I have a meeting on the 19th.
on the 19th, okay. I mean, if you want to keep that week, do you want to do the 18th?
Yeah, the 18th works.
I could do the 18th.
Yeah, I have another meeting that night, but maybe Ed could be available or something.
So 21st is a Thursday. That would be fine with me too.
21st works too.
That works for me.
I'm sorry, that one, I have a meeting that evening, I believe.
Okay.
So unfortunately, I have night meetings on Wednesdays and then the first and third Thursdays of the month typically.
Mr. Chairman, what about the week prior to that, next week?
The 14th?
Mhm.
We need to give the council some time to speak in regards to the 14th works for me.
Yep.
14th would work. If they have time, the 14th works for me too.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can resolve our differences in one phone call. It's just we didn't have a chance to really go through it prior to the hearing.
No, I understand.
Just given current circumstances and everything. So I'll make a point to follow up. I actually have one of Dayton's prior permits in front of me right now. And, I see that this methodology has been employed in the past, and I just have to get, a comfort level with it in this context. So, and follow up with Marguerite. So I think the 14th would work if,
That works.
what should we
Works
block?
for me.
Should we block 5 hours? 7 to midnight?
Can
I think we have to
anyone
be
do,
fair to everybody sitting here. It is still tedious, even though you're sitting down in your own home.
can anyone do given the circumstances earlier than 7 for that reason?
Sure.
Mr. Chair, I just want to point out, I want to sort of ask a question for clarification. I'm not sure if the Cable Commission is currently listening or watching. I would assume they are, but if they have schedule conflicts, that would also be a problem for us as well.
Sure. Is there anyone from Cable that is able to respond to this quickly enough for us to take that into consideration?
What is the day we're currently looking at?
We're talking about the 14th, Andrew.
Like June 14th or next week?
Next week.
Give us 1 second.
Sure.
We're clear for that day.
Excellent. Okay, so if they're clear and everyone I have no opposition to that at all. So that being said, because this will be the first roll call vote we need to make. I will call for the vote, and then I need the person to state their name and how they're voting. So if I would like to entertain a motion that we extend the public hearing for Strawberry Fields to May 14th as a Thursday Actually, excuse me, before I do that, do you guys want to do 6 o'clock? I mean, how early do you guys want to do?
6 would
I
work.
could do 6 if they're available.
6 is fine.
Okay.
6 is all
Excellent.
right.
Okay. Perfect. That's work. So then so going back to that motion, I'm gonna entertain a motion that we extend the Strawberry Fields public input, public hearing, to May 14th, Thursday at 6 PM, to be held remotely.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we extend the public input and the public hearing in regards to May 14th at 6 PM Thursday.
Okay, do I have a second?
that
Second.
motion.
All right. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so the next thing we do need to do is review, discuss, and act on the
Mr.
postponement.
Chair, just for point of order, we
Sure.
did not have any dissent on that, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, point of order as well. We need to state our names and said aye.
Yes, thanks. Thank you. Okay, so can I just have the names of the people that that made that vote, please?
Greg Logan, aye.
Del Lima, aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have to review, discuss, and act on the postponement of the site walk that was scheduled for May 8th. We need to take into consideration that Governor Baker's stay-at-home order goes until at least May 18th. So that being said, Marguerite Mitchell, do you feel like we should just say, due to the circumstances, we are not canceling, but postponing it indefinitely, rather than say, all right, let's do May X date, and then we got to, cancel it again? How do you think we should go forward with this?
That is your call. I mean, it's up to you if you want to wait and just cancel the site visit meeting for right now, because it can't happen as a result of the governor's executive order, and then reset it. As long as you're doing that within your public hearings, you can do it that way, or you can choose a date that's fairly further out, and try to make that choice right now so people reserve it in their calendars.
So before I turn it over to the board, my thought is that we just postpone it indefinitely. I mean, I think with all things considered, it's not on anyone's forefront of their mind to immediately make sure that they go out and see this, especially because it, will involve expensive transportation that may involve interfering with social distancing. I mean, to be honest, who knows? I mean, we could find out in a week from now, he's extending the stay at home until June 8th. I mean, we really have no idea. And I think rather than having to change everything logistically every time we may need to postpone something, I think it's best just to postpone until further notice. What do you guys think?
I think
I have
it's
to
fair.
think-
I feel the same.
Yeah, and from the developer's perspective, and I think we had expressed this sentiment at the last hearing, we have spent an inordinate amount of time at this point trying to coordinate and plan a site visit.
Right.
I double checked the board's regulations, the local bylaws, and Chapter 40B generally. There's no requirement for a site visit. So at this point where the developer has done its best to try to accommodate, the board can do whatever the board wants to do in this regard. But the developer is going to just step aside and let the board do its thing. We invite any of the board members, any of the members of the public to go visit the site at their leisure whenever they want. I think at this point, the effort of trying to coordinate a site visit as a public meeting has been more than extraneous. And, I think under the circumstances, our efforts are better directed elsewhere. So with that, the developer, again, invites anyone that's interested to go view the site. We're happy to get our surveyor out there to mark the center line of the roadway at the entrance, so you can just see that much. Otherwise, I was out in my backyard the other day and I already picked up a tick. So if you guys want to go trek around out there, there's really not much to see. It's up to you. But from our perspective, we're going to step aside.
And keeping in mind that in June or July, mosquito season will start, which prevented us from last season from going there. So we're just going to be in this endless cycle. But we're happy to cooperate with the board in any information that they want as far as taking entrances or anywhere you want. But you know, we've scheduled many means of transportation and before, and we last minute got canceled, just becoming really extraneous.
I personally, I don't disagree with either of you guys on this. What do you guys feel as the board?
I don't think it's necessary that we go. There's nothing to see.
I feel the same way. The only reason why we were trying to do it is for the public to be able to visually see what we were doing. And again, it's an uncontained area, so they're not going to really know where anything is going by looking at a parcel.
That's what I felt too, Greg. I mean, I feel like at this point, it's like Attorney Augustino said. It would make more of a nightmare. It was a nightmare before trying to coordinate something. I mean, imagine now. I mean, we might not find people who even want to go, and because we're probably going to be close to pushing the social distancing suggestions. So I feel that it's best for right now, just not for right now. I'm sorry. It's best just to cancel the public input straight. I'm sorry, cancel the site visit straight out. And if there is anyone, a member of the public who is really interested in seeing this, I say reach out to Jonathan Gray, and we can try to coordinate something when we feel it is safe to do so due to nature and due to the virus as well. What do you guys think?
I agree.
Okay. Okay. So that being said, we've set a date. Carrie, if you could give me some feedback as to any public input that has come up since this meeting has started before we turn it over to those on the call.
No, have received no phone calls and going through the emails, and I don't see anything.
Okay, so Jonathan Gray, while you're checking your email just in case, Carrie, do you mind reading the email that you said we have from Jonathan Gale?
Mr. Chairman, before you do that, I think you do need to make a motion to cancel the site visit that's scheduled for this Friday.
Okay, all right. So do I hear a motion to cancel the site visit for this Friday?
Mr. Chairman, this is Michelle Lima. I'm making a motion to cancel the site visit that we had scheduled for Friday, May 8th. It's indefinitely postponed.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman, this is Greg Logan. I second that motion.
Okay. Is there anyone opposed to this? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Again.
Aye.
And that was Michelle Lima first and Greg Logan second.
Yes.
Okay. So Carrie, whenever you're ready to give us what Jonathan Gale has sent over.
He's just asked that when you open up for public questions, he has a few questions that he asked that you turn on his mic because his questions are too confusing to put in an email.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yep, there he is.
Okay.
Yep. Attorney Mitchell, I assume that's fine if we do that, correct? I know before we go on, my only thing is that if there are other members of the public who are listening who feel like, if we're not extending that same option to them, I just don't want to interfere with that. How do you feel? Are you feel with him doing his comments verbally, or would you prefer they stick to written?
Zach, I think there was a way that people also could have just called in if they wanted to and press something on their phone to have a live mic.
Okay. All right, Attorney Mitchell, do you agree with that? Is that fine?
I think that as long as you're able to have people who need to participate via phone call participate that way, then it's fine to have verbal participation by the public.
Okay, so Jonathan, just be mindful of the time. It is 8:42, and we have some members of the public on the
absolutely
on the call as well.
Absolutely. So
go
I'm
ahead.
going to move right into this then, and I'll be fairly quick. So first thing, as a matter of simple housekeeping, at the end of the meeting, whoever is the host, if you could remember, if there's other business to be taken care of, to please keep me live and not terminate me.
Correct. Yep.
Since my position will revert back. Moving back now to the conversation of earlier. Couple of quick things. Greg had asked a question of Bisher with regard to plowing and private area and the space in the rear. And I'd like to get a clarification on that, perhaps from the developer, because again, and this also goes with number 9 that you guys were just discussing, which could also fall back to number 2 that you were discussing, which is the eventuality of the possibility of this becoming a public way eventually. And if it becomes a public way eventually, or that's the possibility of doing that, I'm concerned about the specific language in number 9 somehow not having that in there unless it's contained somewhere else. And then how that could affect the response that Bisher gave to Greg earlier. Now, I know while it's under development, it's not going to be a public way, but after the fact, there needs to be some language in here that allows for that. And I'm looking for comment at this point, I think, from the developer with regard to that. And then I'll move on to my other 2 questions so I can finish up.
So Chairman.
So
can I-
Bisher, whoever, yeah, go ahead, yep.
Yeah. Yes, we really need to make a distinction between 2 different sets of roads. The main road coming in throughout the whole subdivision, yes, I think there is a chance that this can be public way in the future. But there are 2 additional roadways which are on 2 condominium lots. Those will forever be private ways because they are on a private lot that maintained by a private condominium association. And by those 2 roads, I mean the one that services the cottages and the one that services the condos, the townhouses.
Yep.
Those two roadways are forever private ways.
So to be clear, you have no intention of making those roadways ever wide enough to be considered public ways.
Correct.
Because I think that's something everyone needs to carefully consider for number 9 here. And again, number 2 kind of overlaps number 9. So I'll leave that out there for now, but I think that should be considered for language down the road, Marguerite. As far as my next question, the quick comment is that the bus stop area, and I know it was mentioned about no design or anything like that, and at this point being a slab, if you will, but I think that design needs to be placed and put in early on, simply because of the fact that if but not for, once the development first opens, although it's a long project, you're going to still have children needing to go there and be there, and that may be difficult in certain weather conditions. So I do think that needs to be mitigated and done, at this point in time. The other thing that I'm going to ask, and I had this conversation a little bit with the developer before, I remember when I was still on the other side of the table, was making any of these units handicapped accessible from the get-go. And I'm thinking, for example, one of the cottage units, handicap accessible so that it's wheelchair in and wheelchair out. I know you talked about bedrooms on the first floor, but not only wheelchair in, wheelchair out, but everything else within the unit being wheelchair accessible, countertops, sinks, toilets, et cetera. I'd also like to see that done in one of the affordable, these are for affordable units, by the way, I want to clarify. And in one of the affordable units that will be in the singles, I'd like to see that be available potentially. Now, I don't know if the developer, I think he said he wasn't entertaining that at this time, but I'm wondering if the developer would be willing to reconsider, or if this board can defer to the state if this is something that they can require as part of the permitting process, because this opens these affordables up potentially to people who have multi-disabilities, to veterans with disabilities, et cetera, as well, who might otherwise not be able to take advantage of them. And if we can make it a requirement, and if the state allows us to do that through the permitting process, I think that's something that we should explore. The developer could also use different state agencies to work with us specifically on these designs so that the developer doesn't feel that he's getting into a cost mitigation situation. So I'm throwing that out there as well, and I'd like to hear the developer's thought on that, and maybe you too, Marguerite. And then I'll stop for tonight.
Yeah, Jonathan, this is Chris Agostino. I know you referenced that we had this exchange previously, and I think our answer remains the same, but I'll defer to Bisher. And the answer generally is that we build whatever the lottery requires. So if the lottery has a candidate that's disabled, we build specifically to suit that disability. So we don't necessarily know what the disability is that needs to be accommodated until the lottery winner is identified. So we could build one unit in a certain way, but that might not suit the needs of that particular buyer. So generally we wait, but I'll let Bisher weigh in a little more if he has any insight.
Mr. Chairman, this is really a moot point. For the reason is the affordable houses, all of them, all the units have, whether small, big, fancy, not, they all have the same price. And we are obligated, if there was a handicap buyer, to accommodate their needs without charging them. Okay. So we cannot right now say, all right, we're going to designate one out of 6 in the cottage as the handicap, and one out of whatever in the condos as handicap, or one because we may not get any of them. So why which we haven't, except for in one case, which just happened to be in Stony Ridge. But we have many other developments that we really haven't run into that. But if we do, we will have to accommodate them.
Right.
My only concern, and I do want to hear from Marguerite potentially, is whether, and I understand what you're saying, Bisher, and I do not anticipate or expect that you should have to incur additional costs. And I know this is a lottery-based system, but my concern is that may make this something that is potentially more advantageous to somebody who's looking at a lottery to look out here to apply in advance. And I'm wondering if the Commonwealth allows for that to be built into the process.
So if I might speak to that a little bit, Jonathan, the way the lottery works, because people sign into the lottery and then they get assigned to the houses a little bit on first come, first serve, and then again, according to the lottery, there's not really a good system for making sure that someone with the needs, the accessibility needs, would end up in a house that, so if we said, okay, lot 7 is going to be built for an accessible buyer, the lottery package is not set up so we can hold lot 7 until we find a buyer who fits that, right? And this is where Bisher's point is accurate, that if a buyer comes in with specific needs, then the lottery program has a system in place to make sure we build to those needs. So the protections that are in place through that process are better than what we would come up with here, and that we might conflict with those.
So is it the intent of the developer then to not build units in advance, or to build in advance of whether or not lottery has been held? Or I'm assuming that that's what I'm hearing, that you're not going to build until you have lottery drawing, so you know what you're building.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Even if we built a frame, even if we built a frame and then we got a buyer with an accessibility issue,
right?
It may be that we're required to retrofit the correct accessibility options on that house. Like I said, I believe all those protections are in place in the lottery program.
Okay, because as I said, my concerns are for people that have significant disability, that are mobility, primarily mobility disabilities in terms of movement in, out, and around, and not having those individuals excluded.
Yep. Right. All right. Thank you. So is there anybody here on the call who wishes to be, has any comment to make? I know we have, excuse me, I'm just going through all the names here. We have Nancy Goulart here. We have Dennis Murphy here as well, who are listening. Is there anybody here, like I said, on the call who wishes to wishes to be heard tonight? Yep, Nancy, something Goulart whenever you're ready. We can't hear you.
You need to unmute yourself. Unmute it.
Okay, I couldn't get the cursor to go to the unmute.
Very good.
I just wanted to comment that he's correct. The pandemic ended the stormwater meeting that we had scheduled. However, we still have a full agenda left over from that. And I'm planning to see if I can get a meeting scheduled virtually within the next 2 weeks. It will be during the day. We usually meet at 1 o'clock. And I'm going to see if that's still going to work for the Stormwater Committee. And what I will say is I will let Jonathan,
Great.
know who it is. I will let Jonathan know when we've got a meeting scheduled and find out who will be calling in or joining us virtually from the developer. We still want to go through the as many as we can of the waivers that were requested, because based on the letter we sent, we don't want anything waived, but that doesn't mean that we intend to request that everything be held. No, that's not the intent. Our intent still is to work with the developer to write recommendations to the ZBA, which would indicate this is what we've agreed on. This can be waived, this one can't be waived, or whatever comes out of it. But we do intend to get a feedback back to the ZBA as we originally committed.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else, Nancy, that you have for tonight?
No, that's it.
Oh,
Okay.
and do you have
Yeah, just a quick question. I know, Nancy, that after you had sent that letter, one of the pieces which you had asked if Peter Williams would review the waiver list for you guys. I'm not sure if Peter had a chance to do that.
I haven't gotten any feedback from Peter other than we chatted briefly in the hall after the last meeting. And because he wanted to know what specific things the Stormwater Committee was looking at. And that's what was part of our agenda for the meeting that didn't take place.
Okay, yeah, so that'll be talked about at the meeting. Okay.
Okay, is there anybody else on the call who wishes to be heard tonight?
Mr. Chairman, this is Dennis Murphy. Thank you all for letting me attend your meeting remotely. I miss traveling to Dayton, but this makes it a lot easier. My one comment, since I won't be able to speak at the beginning of the next meeting, is that as you go through the waivers, it would be helpful if there's a discussion of the substance of what's being waived, not just the language. So for instance, I think one of the waivers that we were discussing tonight about the standards of adequacy had to do with the width and grade of roads, as well as site distance. And I think to the extent the roads are not going to comply with the subdivision standards, it would be helpful for my clients, the abutters, and for the public generally, to understand the rationale behind why a 22-foot wide street is adequate. I think there are rationales, but I didn't hear any substantive discussion. For instance, the fire turning apparatus can make that turn, or the depth to groundwater was sufficient that the road wouldn't flood, or anything like that. So my only comment is that as we go through these, in addition to tinkering with the language of the waiver, I think it would be helpful to address the substance of what's being waived as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Marguerite, is there anything you wish to comment on that one? I know that's kind of more of a question for you guys in terms of how you guys plan on going about looking at the waivers on your end.
I do anticipate that as we get into more specific language on some of these, we will actually be addressing the substance of this and asking the developer for more information about that. The initial ones that we were talking about were more preliminary language within the subdivision rules and regulations, all encompassing types of things. So I think that's why we were looking to sort of not necessarily wholesale waive the language itself, but substitute, recognize this as a 40B process that the zoning board of appeals is making the ruling on. But I anticipate as we get into specific provisions relating to things like the width of the roads, we will be confirming with the developer the rationale behind that need for the reduced width of the roads, if that's, which is what they're asking for. And I'm sure you as a board, we've already heard that, you know, the turning apparatuses for all of the large vehicles have been run on the roadways as proposed. And they do comply, and they are able to accommodate, you know, dump trucks, fire apparatus. The fire chief has indicated that he's does not have any concerns as well with the roadway design. And, you know, school buses, ambulance vehicles, other types of public vehicles. But we're going to still be asking the developer to confirm if there's things beyond the width of the roads that they're asking for a waiver on relating to the roadway construction, exactly what it is that why it is they need that waiver, if we haven't already had that information presented. So I
Right.
appreciate the comment, and I agree. It is necessary for us to have these types of discussions. I think we'll get there. We just needed to get through the first preliminary ones.
Okay. So last call, looking at the time, is there anything else from the public? Anyone else that got in last minute and didn't have a chance to say they wanted to be heard? Is there anybody else who wishes to speak tonight?
Mr. Chairman, Miss Easterday has put in public input into the chat.
Okay. So I personally did not see that pop up on my phone. Jonathan Gray, did you see that?
I see it.
Yeah, I'll just read it off for you.
Okay, thank
Public
you.
input, Keith Vieira, who's, I believe, a butter from Country Hill. He's asking the developer to speak to the phasing of the project, as he is extremely concerned the impact the public will have on the already strained school system. So, Bisher, if you could speak, or anyone from the team, if you could speak to sort of what the phasing of the project will look like.
So I would refer anyone that's interested to sheet 5 of the most recent plan set, which depicts phase 1 and 2, showing how it's going to be built in 2 proposed phases. And I would also refer the public to the document that's been uploaded to the Strawberry Fields public documents regarding proposed Strawberry comprehensive permit decision with conditions, which provides for us to, and I believe we discussed it at some length at the last hearing. So if you go to the videotape from the last hearing, we agreed to wait before pulling the first permit because obviously we have a lot of final planning to finish off. So there will be a time period between, you know, the completion of this process and actually getting started on construction. And then I believe we agreed to pull not more than a certain number of permits per year. And again, all that's outlined in the proposed conditions, and there will likely be, you know, confirmation of exactly what that timeline looks like. But you can also go back to the March 10th meeting, I believe. There was discussion about the phasing plans as well in that hearing.
I did see the documents online on the Google Drive, both the plans and the written proposal where that's outlined. So yeah, that information is definitely there in terms of the phasing as well. All right. So Jonathan Gray or Carrie, is there anything else with public input? Last call for tonight.
I don't believe so, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Carrie says no. Excellent. Okay. So that being said, we're going to those of you who are on the call strictly for Strawberry Fields. That's going to conclude our discussion tonight regarding Strawberry Fields. Jonathan Gray, that's correct, right? I'm looking at the agenda. There's nothing else for them.
I believe that is it.
It is, as far as I'm aware too. Yep. Okay. So those are again.
I should just note that I mean the next item on the agenda is related to a policy related to remote public hearings, so they may wish to stay on to sort of listen into that as well.
Okay. Right. Okay. So I see that right here. So now, before I read this, Jonathan, you said this is from the town that Marguerite lives in. This bylaw.
So Marguerite offered up a draft policy related to zoning boards that are proceeding with public hearings virtually for submitting, you know, any documents that would be presented during the meeting. So, I mean, if you'd like, I can read that policy for you.
Sure, you can go ahead. That's fine.
Sure. So it's a draft policy related to the deadline for presentation submissions for virtual public hearings. and it's related to the applicant's responsibility. So the policy is not less than 14 days prior to a hearing. The applicant shall provide a full electronic copy of the application together with all supporting materials, for example, drawings, photographs, or PowerPoint presentations to which the applicant may refer to in the hearing. The electronic file shall be suitably indexed and in searchable format. This shall be in addition to complete applications and timely supplementation for use by the board or committee members and staff as otherwise required. The applicant shall be limited to use of this electronic presentation file in the hearing to ensure the same materials are available to the public, the applicant, board, committee, and staff. A complete new electronic file shall be submitted for each continued hearing if any new or revised materials are to be presented, and these changes shall be clearly identified. This rule does not apply to presentations by members of the public or staff. End of draft policy.
Right. So that just to clarify, that means that there's members of the town who, on the night of the meeting, has something that has transpired because they had a meeting after this deadline has come and gone. They are, correct me if I'm wrong, Jonathan, exempt from this bylaw. They are able to just still submit their comments ahead of time.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And now, Attorney Mitchell, is there anything? So, is this something that you feel like we should consider adopting into our bylaws, or is this just a point of reference for this bylaw?
So when I was speaking to the secretary, I mentioned that I know a lot of communities are trying to come up with their own set of procedures and protocols and policies relating to holding virtual meetings or remote meetings, and recognizing that even if the state of emergency is over, this board may need to continue to have some form of virtual meetings held because members of the public may not be in a position where they're comfortable participating in person at meetings. So, you know, the thought was that town boards need to think about not just how can they facilitate providing public input, but how are they also going to make sure that the public has access to everything that's been submitted to the board. This is something that, as you mentioned, my own community had some discussions with all of their boards who were involved in public hearings and where public input was needed, and they had worked together, those boards, to come up with some language. I believe the 14 days, there wasn't a set number of days. I think you may have changed what I actually sent over, but.
Yeah, we did change that days, and I will, just speak to this as well and just say that, I don't personally have a problem with reducing this. If someone submits a file to me, 24 hours or 48 hours in advance, I can pretty easily put it up on the website or in the Google Drive for anyone to view. So it's really up to the board, but I don't have necessarily a problem with reducing the number of days here.
Yeah, and I think the point is more about making sure that whatever you are adopting works for your own community. So the staff of your board, so Jonathan is pretty tech savvy and your town has a lot of very good technology options to it. So, that helps to make the deadline times a little shorter, but then also keeping in mind that it's pretty clear that the board is going to be looking at a set of documents that is submitted to it by the developer, and that they're going to have that information, and the public can feel assured that they're going to be looking at the exact same information. And if a public person wants to present something in writing, they still have that ability to do that. If a town board or a staff member wants to put something up in writing, they still have the ability to do that even after this deadline, but that is the only type of thing that might, it won't be something new coming in from the developer last minute. And I think that will be helpful too to you board members who might be participating remotely, to know that you're seeing what you've been provided with. Here's where I'm going to know that this is going to be the information I'm looking at for the virtual public meeting. It's not necessary. It's not being required by law. It's more of a practice and protocol that I suggested to Jonathan the board may want to consider adopting as it moves forward through its virtual meeting process.
And this would not be just for this protocol, is that right? This would be for all of the potential ZBA meetings that are not even necessarily Strawberry Fields related?
That is correct.
Right, Jonathan. Yep. Yeah.
That's correct. And the other thing I'll say is that if you heard the beginning, it's not going to waive whatever other timelines. So for instance, if for a variance or a special permit, you still have deadlines where you need things submitted by, so that you can provide notice and publication in various local newspapers and notice to abutters, et cetera. So,
Right.
All of those types of requirements still exist. It's not superseding that at all. It's just helping to make sure that the documents that are being submitted to you are able to be uploaded. They're in a format that you can easily upload and work through, and like we did tonight, searchable, so that if we need to go and find something, we can easily access that.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, I think I will, just because the open meeting law is a 48-hour notice, I think I'd be comfortable with revising this down to 48 hours.
I think so too.
I'd give yourself an extra day, Jonathan.
Yeah, all right,
I appreciate the hard work you're putting in, but I think that it's only fair that you have everything, at least give yourself a day to work on it. And I would say work business days.
Right.
So 3 business days would sound to me to be very fair. I think that's even pretty, admirable of you, because I think you could go with a couple more if you needed.
Okay,
Is
all right,
this-
I'll revise my recommendation down to 3 business days.
Would this be for, let me finish my question so it'll make sense, by the way.
Advice of counsel.
Will this be, if this is for all meetings going forward, then my question, or all virtual meetings going forward, does this only apply during the state of emergency, or will it apply for all future meetings after the state of emergency is lifted? And the reason I'm asking that is I'm concerned about the public thinking that if this is for after the state of emergency is lifted and we did this process haphazardly for some reason because we needed to have a virtual meeting, that they're being left out, or they're being, the process is being railroaded. I hate to use that term, but I can perceive the public thinking that. And I think we need to be very careful of the timeline here and how we perceive this.
Right. So, Jonathan, Gail, to go directly off of what you said, because this is a more serious thing we could potentially be adopting into our bylaws, whether it be temporary or permanent. It's not something that I feel comfortable voting on officially, presenting for a vote officially tonight, seeing as our next meeting is shorter notice than what it usually is. I think it's best to mull this over, consider the way that we feel, consider a deadline that does work for us, and consider the wording of this before we officially, I just don't want tonight say, oh yeah, let's vote this in. I'd rather take some time to think about what's going to work for us and what's going to work for how we're going to word it as well.
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does anyone else on the board feel differently about what I said?
No, I agree. I think we should wait on it, think about it, and I'll come up with a plan from there.
Okay. All right, excellent. So that being said, the next agenda item, Jonathan Gray, just remind me, it would be the, did anyone have a chance to look at the meeting minutes? I know it came out a little bit late.
Well, wait a minute. Do we still have the other folks still on the line? Because I don't know.
So yeah, so I'll just make an announcement here that, this is pretty much for anyone who's interested in Strawberry Field stuff. There's nothing else on our agenda
Correct.
tonight that would be anyway sort of related to that, unless anyone has additional, public input or anything like that.
Aside from just saying thank you to everybody, to members of the public, to the applicants, to Carrie Easterday for putting in her time, for this right now. I know this is unprecedented term events, but I feel like, all things considered, I feel like the process of this went pretty well. And I personally feel comfortable that if we have to do more of these, I think it's going to work. I mean, obviously there might be some hiccups along the way, but thank you everybody for everything that you're doing, whether it's for the town or for the public. I know it's a time that no one really expected this to happen. So
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Jonathan, thank you for the quick tech support there. That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. All right. So, did anyone have a chance to look at the meeting minutes yet? Like I said, I know it was a little bit late. I mean, if we haven't had time,
Mr. Chairman, I can also just say, you know, if people are not comfortable approving these meeting minutes, I can just put them up in draft form for the public to view if we still want more time to look them over so that, you know, it's accessible, and then we can approve them at a later date. So I'll just mention that, you know, if people would be comfortable with that.
Personally,
Mr. Chairman, I did read them.
Okay, I didn't. I worked late today. I got home right around 6, so I haven't really had time to look at it yet, especially because the meeting minutes are related to Strawberry Fields. I would rather, personally, I don't feel comfortable approving them yet until I've had a chance to look at them, but I am comfortable with John, if you want to throw them up in just in draft form and then attach to the next agenda. The next meeting agenda that we're going to vote on these. I just personally don't feel comfortable approving them yet.
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll just make a, you know, a very large disclaimer at the top that says that they are, you know, unapproved meeting minutes in draft form for everyone to know.
Yep. Okay, so since we're not voting on this, Jonathan, do we have any more agenda items? I don't believe we do.
So we just have general public input. If there was anyone on the call who wanted to provide any, you know, public input, Ryan, if you have anything to say.
Yeah, definitely.
Not sure. And at this point, I'm just checking my email now. I don't believe I've got any further public input, so I don't. And so that's it for the
Ryan, I mean, time is great for it.
Yeah, I mean, it was
if
great.
you want to give us a little introduction, go for it. Please do.
I mean, yeah, it was a great meeting. I don't have any questions or comments right now, but yeah, I'm looking forward to getting sworn in. And
is there any kind of date for that yet? I assume no, right?
I haven't. Jonathan, you told me that the town was going to reach out to me, right? And
they should be sending you a letter in the mail,
Okay.
but I'm not exactly sure when that would be coming based on them being sort of overwhelmed with a whole bunch of COVID-19 stuff.
Right.
But if you'd like, I'll just follow up with Sue, or actually, I'm not sure if I would follow up with probably the Board of Selectmen actually to see, you know, what the process is, but I'm assuming that they will be sending you a letter.
Okay. Yeah.
Ryan, this is Jonathan Gale. And for those of us, first of all, welcome aboard once you're sworn in. But having said that, for those of us who don't know anything about you yet, could you just take 1 minute and tell us
Yes.
who you are, a little bit of background or whatever, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. So
Thank you.
I've lived in Dayton my whole life. I am currently an attorney. I work in, actually, I've been working from home for the past month, but our office is in Cranston, Rhode Island, and I work primarily in business and corporate and real estate law. I am married. We just had our first kid in mid-March, and yeah, so it's looking forward to helping out in the zoning board.
It must be nice. I mean, now obviously it's not nice being home, but considering what's going on right now, you do have, you know, kind of extended time to bond, you know, with everyone. Considering normally you probably would have been at work, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's been great. I've really enjoyed that part.
And you have no excuse not to wake up in the middle of the night.
Very true.
Very true. Yeah, so you know, unfortunately, I think when the last time you and I spoke, Ryan, was I think right before this started happening. I remember asking you if your wife was home yet because it was just starting to go crazy. So, you know, I didn't think we thought your first meeting would be done this way, but you
know, you got to do what you got to do.
Absolutely. All right. Is there anybody else who has any comments for tonight?
Zach, do we have anything else we have to deal with right now, such as expenses or budgets or any of that stuff? Is all that on hold?
No, sir. There's nothing. There is nothing else we have to. The only thing was the housekeeping stuff was the minutes and just announcing that we were going to be canceling our May 27th meeting, which obviously we know now is not going to happen because we are going forward with the Strawberry Fields public hearing. But other than that, that's all we had. There's nothing else.
So, Mr. Chairman, since we'll be most likely proceeding with our June 24th, I believe, regular meeting, I'll be needing to, we do have an application for variance And obviously right now we have the authority, if we wanted to delay it until 45 days after the state of emergency. But, you know, it's sort of like, you know, do we want to have a public hearing for a variance on, you know, Zoom as well?
I'm definitely fine keeping the 27th date. I see no need to postpone it. Whether the meeting will be via Zoom or in person, I mean, I could be being completely optimistic here. Who knows? It is entirely possible. We may be allowed to have some smaller meetings in person by the time that comes. You know, that is a possibility. So I don't want to say, yes, we're going to have it, and yes, it will be on Zoom, because, I mean, I don't want to say that and it turns out, hey, we could have met in person, or I don't want to say, yes, it'll be in person, and it turns out we're going to have to do Zoom. I'm fine definitely keeping that date, though, and keeping that public hearing as scheduled. But in terms of where and how, I don't feel comfortable saying either way yet, because, I mean, I really don't know.
So I guess we'll just wait until the end of May to make a call on that. And then, you know, that's when really we would need to start, you know, the Taunton Daily Gazette advertisements and you know, a butter notification. At that point, we could,
right,
if we wanted to, we could include, you know, information on a Zoom call, that type of thing. But
yeah, just
we
because
can wait until then.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously the stay-at-home is extended to the 18th. You know, at that point, they could be talking about releasing plans as to what towns or businesses can slowly start to normalize. And by then we could have but by then or before then, we could have some kind of direction as to what the town is going to want us to do in terms of meetings. So as long as we get the information out in time for the Gazette as to how it's going to happen, that's the most important thing in terms of scheduling. So I think it is best just to wait in terms of the how and the where until we find out more from the state.
Sounds good.
All right. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn.
In your name, sir?
Greg Logan.
Do I have a second?
Second, Jonathan Gale.
Jonathan Gale, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. Thanks very much.